back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space, because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it, because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast, and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast, and having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high, and I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed, and they said, so much coming around it. You know, we live in a solar system. We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This system has got 7 planets and its own sun. I think this one is just a big, bright, reddish orange iron ball because it's giving off all this red iron oxide dust out into the atmosphere. At first, it was just a teeny little red speck of fuzzy red dust in the distance, but over the years, as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about '08, we could see this thing like it was across the street, and we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire, giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction. And you could see the planet circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. Hopefully nothing in this mess will hit us, even though it does say it will in the Bible, at least as it does in my Bible. It says we can expect all kinds of problems. We were looking at asteroids. Right close to this thing, there's asteroids that are floating around right near that are orbiting the main sun itself. These things appear to be about 500 miles across. And as you go back into the tail, you get into meteorites that go back for millions of miles in the tail. This thing looks like a giant red teardrop-shaped dust cloud. And you can see, once if you're able to see it up close like we did, you can see every speck out there. I guarantee you there's trillions of meteorites following this thing. Now, these CIA people that I know say that we're not going to be that close to it when it goes past us. They're saying that in order to attain breakaway speed, when it comes up around the backside of the sun, its speed will at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will, and that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. And then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field tail and be pelted with meteorites. And, of course, in the Bible it says they will a talon 70 pounds. So if you've got 70-pound meteorites falling like hail, and I can guarantee you they will be falling like hail because there are that many in the tail of this thing. This thing has got a tail loaded with trash. I mean, it's incredible the amount of stuff that's in this thing's tail. And we're going to go right through that tail, and if it doesn't beat everything on the surface of the ground into a flat putty, I don't know what it'll take. I tell everybody, you better be at least 20, 30, 40, 50 feet underground and have either concrete or stone above you, because it'll break through the roof or whatever you've got if you don't. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us, And when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay. Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay. Well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star brown dwarf or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this apparent that this thing is just orange hot. I mean, to tell how hot it is, I was told that they estimated between 5 and 10 million degrees, but, I don't really know, if that's right or not. I mean, it's got to be pretty hot because it's sending all of this red iron oxide dust out into space around it.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V, like wings, upside-down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side, and then as it starts to climb out and go away from us, listen, I was told that this thing's magnetic field is going to be so strong, anybody that does not have a padded lead helmet to wear will have their brain gutted for everything they ever knew, and they'll be a complete raving moron after this thing passes. They'll they won't know, they'll pee in their pants. They won't have a clue what's going on, because this thing will gut their brain. And I was reading a deal in my Bible. It says that after this happens, that nobody will care because they won't be able to remember it. Well, of course, I was told by somebody the reason that is because the electromagnetic field from this thing will be so strong, because, see, as it comes up underneath of us, it's going to start and pull us toward it. And then, just like a pair of big magnets, all of a sudden it's going to lock onto us. And when it does, it's going to be like the Jolly Green Giant hit the earth in the ass. It's going to send a jolt 500 to 1,000 foot high. This is what I'm told. 500 to 1,000 foot high shock waves all the way around planet Earth. They'll be so bad that in a lot of areas that don't have good solid soil, it'll fluff it so badly that you'll practically be like you're standing in quicksand. And that this thing's magnetic field will literally gut your brain of everything. And so you may want to give some thoughts to getting you some sheet lead, build you a little lead helmet to wear, like a little motorcycle helmet to protect your entire brain and the back of your neck, so that way this can't happen. Because if these guys are right about this, and I'm pretty sure they are, because I know for a fact they know what they're talking about when they say stuff. And and it does sound reasonable to me, knowing what I do about electromagnetic energy, that this could happen. And it very easily could gut everybody's brain for everything they ever knew, and they'll stand there and pee in their pants and go, gee, what was that? And that's if they still know how to talk. And there won't be any doubt in anybody's mind, because this thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And I mean, and that's what we've seen. So, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward, and this thing was coming up underneath of us, and I tell you the honest to God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now, but, you know, that's just my general feeling that, you know, and I'm a pretty psychic guy, I have the feeling that this thing is right close by and that we're going to see it any time. I mean, I've been doing everything I could do to get prepared for it to... I'm really worried about what Jesus says. You know, when the fig tree is putting on its leaves, know that summer is near, and I'm at your door. And that worries me more than probably anything I've read in the Bible about this whole thing, the parable of the fig tree, because everything seems to be in place for this thing's arrival. And the bad thing is, he says, I'm going to come like a thief in the night. Well, it does also say in the Bible that I'm going to make the sun go down at noontime in Jerusalem. Okay, if that's the case, there's only one thing that'll make the sun go down, not hit the horizon, down, go down at noontime, and that's if the planet experiences a pole shift.
Okay, I got a quick question that you can probably answer really quickly and then continue from the chat room. Wants to know if you're talking about Planet X or Elenin, and I don't think, I've never thought Elenin is Planet X. Terrell's pretty stuck on that, but I think Elenin, as a result of it, it's a comet that's been kicked in.
Elenin is extinction level event Nibiru is near.
Right.
Does that explain it?
Yeah.
Okay, because listen, they've known about this thing forever. And I mean, they've known about it forever. I mean, if I read about it in a science magazine in 1961, that tells you that, I mean, it's only 1,800 years away. How could they not be able to see it when it came around the backside of the last sun and headed this way?
Right.
You have to know they've been watching it, because if you know, Carl Sagan was showing stuff that they took with their old telescopes that was billions and billions of miles away, and this thing's only 1,800 years away. Well, and by 1930 it was only 70 years away. You know, we do estimate that this thing, let me give you a thing, maybe you can figure out your own timeline. We estimated that this thing is traveling around 3,500 miles an hour, okay?
Okay.
That was our estimate of its speed. Now, it has been picking up speed, and that's the reason why we think it's going to arrive early, because when it comes around the backside of the sun, it's got to double that speed in order to attain breakaway speed to leave the sun and not wind up orbiting it. It's never orbited the sun in the past that we know of, so that means that it's going to have to attain breakaway speed to head back out into space. Now, you look at the NASA videos, photos, and all this other crap those morons put on the internet. This thing is coming in, it's going to, as soon as it goes around the top of the sun, it's going to go back out into space.
Right.
And it's going to do this really fast. When it goes past us, it's going to go past us so fast that we'll almost have no time to get ready. That's my opinion, but, you know, just drawing it out on paper a few times and thinking about it, and I went, you know, if this thing picks up enough speed to make breakaway speed, then that means it's going to come past us. You know, this thing, according to what I was told, is that this thing is approximately 47,000 miles in diameter, you know, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth, and it'll come past us, and we won't have a lot of warning, and we won't get to see it in the sky until it's on us. I think the NASA timeline is completely off. I think this thing's going to arrive much earlier than they say it is. You know, I know they're saying October, but, you know, if you look at the, you know, now, I was told that the poles are not shifting at 42 miles a year. They're shifting at 42 miles a day. And the reason is because this planet is rolling over to face this thing. Now, when it goes by, it's not going to push our North Pole away. It's going to grab our southern pole with its northern pole, and it's going to be like somebody kicked this planet in the ass. That earthquake that it talks about in Revelations, when the opening of the sixth seal comes, from what I've been told, that's very accurate, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive earthquake when it locks onto us. As it goes past us, we're going to follow it right upside down. The oceans are just going to be roaring from pole to pole, as you could well guess they would, because if you take a planet that's 7,000 miles across and roll it upside down in 30 minutes, you're going to have some...
Let's go to Chris in North Carolina. You're on the air. Welcome. Yes, sirs. This question's for Dan or Steve Quill. Sorry, I'm about to say Dan Quill. That's weird.
It's okay. Dan Quill's. Go ahead.
My question is, do you think the government already knows about an impending doom from Islamic terrorists in the Jade Helm area? Do you think that's going to implement martial law?
Well, I think it's going to be one of the things that springboards us into martial law. And, you can't say ISIS an open border with any type of intellectual or emotional or moral integrity. Why have the borders not been secured? Alex has had people on. I've talked to them, interviewed them, read their emails on the air. They're basically saying if we arrest anybody who's a known terrorist, and I'm not talking about Latinos or Hispanics, they're talking about someone comes in from the State Department and orders them let go. So the point is absolutely ISIS. Here's the point in terror. Terror is ultimately to bring about submission, and that's what they're trying to do. We see it in the politics of radical Islam in the United States. We see it all through the Middle East. And the point is we could have stopped this. And if anybody remembers, Alex, remember the long victory parade, 4.5 miles long, of ISIS and their captured U.S. stuff in Iraq? And
yes.
And people were saying, why didn't we hit them then? Well, simply because the powers that be in this country, deep down, they are Satanists, and they're going to use everybody. It goes right back to Albert Pike's statement, turn the Muslims against the Jews, Jews against Christians, and when everybody wipes out everybody, we bring on Lucifer, the true God. And I'm not going to argue with anybody. That's immoral.
Well, sure, that's what they're doing. And then people say, Alex, you're the guy that exposed false flag terror on 9/11. Why are you saying ISIS is real? They have raised this al-Qaeda jihadi army. They've changed the name to ISIS and Islamic State to confuse the public. I think Colonel Schaefer on, you name it, the Pentagon knows, 90+% of the Free Syrian Army is al-Qaeda, is ISIS. And so our government's funding them. They let them come in. They let them attack. No need to even stage an event now because the upstream, they created them, allowed them to operate through Saudi funding, through NATO funding. Then they can take our liberties in the response to ISIS. And ISIS, in return, is given part of the Middle East as their payoff for being the secret army that destabilizes the West so a police state can be put in place. And that's the bottom line of what's happening. Separately, though, it just shows what a farce Homeland Security is because they say their main mission is who? Those of us that don't want to go along with the New World Order. Thank you, Chris. Let's talk to Michael in Mississippi. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. Hey, Steve. Steve, I had a question. I listened to several interviews that with Bob Fletcher, including the one you did on the Hagman show. And Bob Fletcher's pretty much put his investigative credibility and reputation on the line about an incoming celestial event that he believes martial law must be established or set in place.
That's right. A lot of folks think there's a asteroid coming in or something. What do you know about that?
Well, years ago I talked specifically about Nibiru. That's the official ancient name, the 10th planet.
Planet X.
Planet X, Gabriel's fist, Lucifer's hammer, and based on what a Navy SEAL, I posted on my alert site, Navy SEAL explains a big event as being that, okay? In other words, Alex, they know of all the earth changes that are going to be happening, they know of all of the electrical discharges, they know of Roche's, R-O-C-H-E's limit, and the point is that the whole universe, if you want to look at it real simply, is go and look up Velikovsky Worlds in Collision, and then the time of this is interesting because we've heard, both of us from separate sources, that they're stocking their underground.
Well, sure. And how many record blood moons have there been?
Well, what is it? 3? The 4th is coming up.
I mean, I don't even put stake in all this, but the elites do. They're obsessed with it all. Final segment of the main radio broadcast. We're in a little 5-minute overdrive that's internet only. Infowars.com/show. Well, some stations carry the 4th hour, so that's not quite true. I want to thank all of our affiliates out there. Be sure and support them. Be sure and support the sponsors. Spread the word. Some of the stories up on Infowars.com. Explosive new documents reveal Obama-Clinton spin and lies on Benghazi. Al Gore's climate change lies exposed. The latest on that. Now he says in a few more years we'll be all flooded and dead, basically. Of course, he said in 2007 it would be by 2013. Leftists exploit biker bloodbaths to complain about white privilege. They say, why isn't the National Guard out on the street? Because they arrested everybody. It happened in a localized area. It isn't just random people going out and burning stuff. It was a outlaw motorcycle gang impromptu rally. And the whole thing's very suspicious. Now they got a giant rot rally coming up in Austin, Texas, and who knows what's going to happen with that. Most of the bike riders are great people. I don't care if you want to wear an outfit and be part of a club. Talking about the criminal groups claim they're anti-establishment, but all I see is them working with the establishment with their drug dealing and all the rest of it. Going back to Steve Quayle, we're taking phone calls. Steve, what do you think is really going on with this? I mean, you say you have some questions about it. Why does everything keep popping up in Texas?
Well, I think that Texas, number one, has one of the strongest real-based economies in the world without massive amounts of debt. Number two, it's the spirit of the Alamo. Number three, it basically is because if that secret agreement that is in place that I've been told that you've been affirmed that it is too, to return Aztlan to Mexico, then obviously the greatest resistance is going to come from Texas. Texas has a history, and by the way, wasn't there a TV series out or HBO special called The Sons of Texas? I think there was or something, or is coming out, and I thought that was very prophetic in its timing. So it's because of the border, it's because of the strength of the people, it's because you're obviously a God-fearing state historically, with minor exceptions in some of the politics, and that's the idea of all of the assets that are available in Texas, meaning they are.
Oh, it's definitely its own standalone country, and the U.S. surpassed a year ago Saudi Arabia in global production. That's mainly Texas is the biggest oil producer in the world. It has its own infrastructure. They look at the demographics, and they know politically Texas is not going to say yes to the New World Order, and so Jade Helm is a dry run. We're not demonizing the military. It's there to condition them as well. Rich in Ohio, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex and Steve.
Welcome.
What a combination. It's great to talk to both of you guys at the same time. You guys are excellent. I watch your videos and, I connect the dots.
Thank you, brother.
You're both skirting around the big dots. You both see it, but you don't see it.
Well, hey, you're on the air. No, don't need to preface it. Got a minute?
And then look at Richard Shaw's new production on the Torah codes. And these are the two biggest dots that are interconnected that you're missing.
You know, I've been on the air for 20 years, and I'm always hearing about Planet X. I know there's a Kuiper belt, there's an asteroid belt. I know we get struck by big objects. I know it's real, but people are always saying it's coming in 2-3 years, and it just becomes this all-encompassing thing. I know governments are dug in, 4 big collisions, comets, you name that. I mean, so I know that's a real threat. Yellowstone, supervolcano, all of it. But to just say it's this and it's going to happen, I don't think we can say that. Steve Quayle?
I agree with you, Alex. I hear about Yellowstone's going to blow any minute. I fly down there almost weekly sometimes. I mean, I'm down there. It's not ready to blow. The bottom line is it doesn't do you good to worry about Planet X if you're going to get wiped out, in August, September, should Jade Helm go active. The timing is always the issue. Doesn't do
Stay there, Steve. Back in 70 seconds. I want you to finish up. SteveQuayle.com, Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Nightly News Tonight 7. The over-the-top nature of reality is why so many people just can't wake up, because it is legendary, epic, what's happening. And let's say we're exaggerating, and half of it's true. It's still over-the-top insane. And unfortunately, I think it's probably worse than we're saying in many respects. The elite have gone insane like Caligula. I want to go to Max, Mike, and others here in just a moment. And I want to give a final comment real quick after that to Steve Quayle. I really appreciate riding shotgun with us today. Max has a question for Steve Quayle on weather weapons. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex Jones and Quayle Man. I was wondering with the weather weapons they use, electrofrequency, magnetism, microwaves, and also chemicals, do those interfere also with, I naturally assume so, the human body and mind, and also a further extension of MK Ultra?
Are you asking me if it can affect the human mind?
If they're also used to affect the human mind, yes.
Thank you, Max.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm sorry, Alex. His phone broke up or something. I could barely hear.
Yeah, that's why I let him go. His phone went bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many studies. You can go on the internet, electronic mind control. Also, it's possible to produce heart attacks. I mean, they have electromagnetic weapons, and I believe that's what they used on Breitbart when they killed him within 5 or 10 minutes after National Defense Authorization Act, 1867 was in place. Andrew Breitbart was dead.
What about Michael Hastings and blowing his car up? I mean, they really are killing people.
Yeah, for a certainty, and I've done my homework, Alec. It's just on Weather Wars. People say, well, they can't do that. I'm just telling you, they can, and when I've spent, I'm looking at my, 400, 500 footnotes, whatever there is, the point is yes, they can, yes, they are, and yes, they will.
We're not in Kansas anymore, as I say every day. I mean, we are in a futuristic weirdo land, and the public still thinks we're back in 1950. We're not. Let's talk to, let's go ahead and talk to Drew in Missouri. You're on the air with Steve Quayle. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, great talking to you two. Real quick, my question is, I got 2 small kids, and I want to be prepared for this upcoming Civil War. What are the 3, maybe 3 top things you suggest a guy should do? I got a farm, I can prepare and self-sustain. What do you suggest, like guns and ammo, silver and gold, stockpile food and water?
Yeah, by the way, they've been holding gold down. It's starting to go back up. Steve Quayle, what would you do, the top things to get ready for the unraveling of society, which we know is coming? The only question is when.
Right. Well, this is going to sound extreme, but at the time, when I say extreme, at some point, all of us have to throw our smartphones away, okay? That's true. That's a radio tracking beat.
Oh, yeah, they track you everywhere you go with it.
Yeah, but the number one, food first. What I'm telling everybody, Alex, food prices are going to rise. Food will be available, but at nothing near recognizable prices. So no matter what a budget is, I know the farmer has got food and stuff stored up. You have to have a form of self-defense. You must absolutely, and be familiar with it. I'm sorry, a father is charged biblically to protect his family. And Alex, you've gone on record, I've gone on record, there's nobody, as long as we're alive and God gives us grace and breath, that are going to harm the...
That's right, and it's not we're looking for violence. You've just got to be ready to kill for your family and already be preset that you're not going to think about it when the time comes or you'll be dead.
Absolutely. The other thing you've got to think about is having a secondary location. Everybody needs a back door. By back door, if you have land, sir, make sure that you have other areas on your land beside the home. The point is that, you've got to get a realistic working knowledge of the things that disappear first, and you want to be where everyone else isn't when the cash are killing cash. So the only way people outside of the system who won't take the mark of the beast will be able to do any type of commerce is with gold and silver. There's an attack on that. They've kept it down. It's getting ready to move, and we're watching that in the last 3 days.
That's right. I want to have you up very soon, if you can do it, Steve, to break down, because you're a top prepper, one of the main founding guys. You never talk about that, about just the war on individualism, on cash, on farming, on the family.
Hello and welcome back to Planet Nibiru. As always, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who subscribes, likes, and comments on our videos. It's an honor to have you as part of our community. Today, we will be discussing some rather serious news about the comet that has left the orbit of Nibiru and is heading straight towards Earth. As with any celestial body that is headed in our direction, there are many theories and projections as to where it may eventually end up. But this one in particular is intriguing, and according to one doomsday theorist, it might just be the one that finally does us in. It's no surprise that Earth is in the shooting gallery of comets, asteroids, and space debris, as we can see clearly from this depiction. This is what happens in space all the time, we just don't see it. Most of these objects, the ones in red, are called sun divers, and are pulled into our sun by its massive gravity, causing us no concern. But last year, NASA detected an object that could be a comet or an asteroid on a path towards Earth. The space agency claims the mysterious object will pass safely at a distance of nearly 32 million miles from Earth. But one self-proclaimed astronomer has come up with an alternative theory, suggesting that the asteroid could crash into Earth, wiping out cities, continents, and even causing a mega tsunami. The strange object was discovered last year, and it is theorized that over the last 5 years it has traveled inward toward the center of our solar system, passing just under the main asteroid belt and under the orbit of Mars until it will swing just inside Earth's own orbit. The object, which is a blurred line between an asteroid and a comet, was discovered by NASA's NEOWISE mission. Self-proclaimed Russian astronomer Dr. Diomin Damir Zakharovich has said it is heading straight towards our planet. He states, "The object left the Nibiru system in October when Nibiru began spinning counterclockwise around the Sun. Since then, NASA has known it will hit Earth, but they are refusing to tell people. If the asteroid hit Earth," he says, "it could destroy cities, countries, or cause a tsunami that could take out an entire continent. We are all in peril," he states with a stern look on his face. NASA, on the other hand, does not think the object will hit Earth. Instead, it is saying it will pass nearly 32 million miles away from our planet. The trajectory of the object is well understood, and the object is not a threat to the Earth for the foreseeable future, says NASA. What NASA scientists do know is that the object is relatively large, about a half a mile across. It is also quite dark, reflecting only a few % of the light that falls on its surface. Its body resembles a comet in its reflectivity in orbit, but it appears to lack the characteristic dust and gas cloud tail that defines a comet. The object could have cometary origins, said Deputy Principal Investigator James Gerbs Bauer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. But according to reports, Dr. Zakharovich has said that his data reveals a very different background. He claims that the comet or asteroid originated from the planet Nibiru. He says that the object left the Nibiru system in October when Nibiru began spinning counterclockwise around the Sun. Some conspiracy theorists believe that the planet Nibiru is set to enter our solar system this year, after being driven here by the gravitational force from a binary star twin of our Sun. They go on to claim that this accounts for the strange weather patterns, uptick in earthquakes, and volcanoes worldwide. Nibiru, sometimes referred to as Planet X, is a hypothesized planet, small star, or mini-solar system on the edge of our own solar system. NASA itself claims that there is evidence that there is something large at the edge of our solar system that is causing perturbations in the planetary orbits and possibly causing a large amount of asteroids to be hurled towards our Sun. Some of these come into contact with Earth's orbit, such as the Chelyabinsk meteorite that exploded over Russia on February 15th of 2013. The existence of an extrasolar entity large enough to cause these problems was also proposed by astronomers at Caltech in January last year. Conspiracy theorists believe that the gravitational influence of the rogue planet Nibiru disrupted the orbits of other planets hundreds of years ago, and perhaps even caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. They go on to surmise that the next disruptive passage into the solar system could happen at any time. So get in the comment section and let us know what you think. Do you think that this rogue asteroid could cause Earth a problem? Do you believe that the Nibiru system will finally make its grand entrance sometime in 2017? Do you think that Nibiru is at the center of all of the weather anomalies, the uptick in earthquakes and volcanism that we're seeing worldwide? Please let us know. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with another video very soon.
On today's program, I interview Marshall Masters. Marshall Masters is a former CNN Science Features news producer, freelance writer, television analyst, and the publisher of MarshallMasters.com. Since 1999, he has been researching Earth changes and Nibiru flyby-related topics including sustainable survival communities, catastrophic crop circles, impact events, and future technologies. To learn more about Marshall Masters, visit MarshallMasters.com. In this presentation, we discuss his article, Is Planet X Nearing Perihelion? And how to prepare for the coming worldwide mass extinction event known as Planet X. Like the show, comment below, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy the show. Marshall Masters, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Marshall, before we get going here, is Planet X and Nibiru the same thing?
Yes. And actually, what we talk about is the Planet X system, because we have a brown dwarf star that's a small companion star to Sol, which is called Nemesis. When I was in high school, many eons and hairlines ago, that was the big rage. Everybody was talking about, do we live in a binary star system? Because 90% of the solar systems in our galaxy have multiple suns. And there's a lot to indicate that we as well, are living in a binary or maybe even a trinary system. And Nemesis is a mini constellation. Nemesis is in this comet-like orbit clockwise around the sun, spends most of its time in the southern skies below us. When it bounces up into the northern skies, reaches its point of perihelion, its closest distance to the sun, and then heads back south, that's when things start to really go south for us. And that's the bad time. And so it has planets and moons around it. And like, in our solar system, we have major planets, we have minor planets, all right? And the same with that. I talk about the Nemesis star and its three major planets, which are innermost, which is Helion, and Helion is a bright gaseous star-like planet. And then there's Arbota, which is the second out from Nemesis, and that is a small rocky planet and habitable. And then the third, which is Nibiru. Nibiru is the outermost, and actually the name Nibiru stands for the planet of crossing. And so when we're talking about Nibiru and we're talking about Nemesis, we're talking about the same mini constellation. The term Planet X was really brought into existence by the astronomer Percival Lowell. And there's been an ongoing search for this thing for hundreds of years. When we talk about Uranus, that was the first planet that was discovered with a telescope. But Neptune was the first planet discovered with mathematics. And what happened was that they knew where Neptune was because of the perturbations they observed in the orbit of Uranus. And literally just, zoomed right in on it mathematically. And once they made that determination, it was very, very quickly discovered. And then Neptune was observed to have similar perturbations. And then astronomers back then understood that there was this ongoing search for Neptune's perturber, which the term Planet X just simply means there's something big out there, but we're not exactly sure as to where to find it, but we know it exists by the manner in which it interacts with other objects in our solar system. And so that was the big reason why Percival Lowell founded the Lowell Observatory. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We have a mini constellation coming through. That's the reason why I call it the Planet X system. It's just, when I first started, it was just Planet X. But as we learn more about what we're dealing with, then I started calling it a system because that's really what it is. It's a mini, or more specifically, it's a mini constellation.
When I was a kid in the mid-'80s, we all talked about Planet X. We understood it to be the undiscovered planet beyond Pluto.
Correct. And so, yep, you guys were, and interestingly enough, there was an awful lot of really good reporting in mainstream media about Planet X. And then it just all died. And it didn't die from a lack of interest. It died because there was a concerted effort to kill the topic. And that really came into being after the 1983 IRAS mission. And whistleblowers who saw the original files on this, and this comes from different whistleblowers with same access to the same files. And these gentlemen, Bob Dean is one. I think he's a very, very fine gentleman. And he's really getting on up there. I don't even know if he's still with us. But there were others. And interestingly enough, they weren't the officers who knew this information. They were non-commissioned officers, the guys with all the chevrons up and down on their slaves. And because these are the guys that they would put in the secrets vaults, and they would have the key to all the secrets. Now, if you were an officer, you had different levels of security, and you could see this, but you couldn't see that. But for these sergeants who were in charge of maintaining all of this, they had the absolute highest security level because they had the key to the kingdom. They could see anything. And they didn't have a lot of folks coming down and asking them for things as a rule. So what do? You're sitting there kind of bored, and you start pulling out file jackets and readings. And these guys would start reading about all of this, and it would just drop them on their head. And because IRAS found Nemesis, and it just showed up like a sore thumb. Now, it was in the infrared. Now, here's the thing about brown dwarf stars. And they're actually stars that have just been recently discovered. And what we're finding is that they're far more common in our solar system, in our galaxy, than our type of star. Far more common. And these things are, in terms of their mass, they're about 10 to 15 times that of Jupiter, and several times larger than Jupiter in radius. But when you compare that with a sun the size of ours, that's like saying, you got a hummingbird orbiting a buffalo. So, because mass is really what determines it. And the thing about a brown dwarf star is that they can support life, but they're very dirty. And the reason why they're dirty, and that in turn makes them incredibly difficult to observe, that's the reason why it's a Johnny-come-lately to astronomy, is that they ignite like our sun did, and then, however, they lack the ability to maintain a nuclear furnace, so to speak. And so our sun continues burning brightly because it has the mass. The brown dwarf doesn't. And so it's more like the charcoal briquettes in your backyard barbecue, and they get white and then they bank off, And if you're into barbecue, that, you want to wait until your coals get it, nice and white. And then, they're at their peak, and that's when you put on the meat, because then they start banking off, and you're not going to wind up with an overcooked outer and an undercooked inner.
Well, and all the gases have burned off, and you're just dealing with hot carbon.
Yeah, exactly. But in space, what happens with these things is they have this that happens, and then they're perpetually shrouded with all of this dust and debris that is created by their ignition, which never is able to settle into anything. And so they can be observed in the infrared, but in terms of the visible light spectrums, which is an incredibly narrow band, there's something that, no, you're not going to see them until they're fairly close in, and that's the case with this. Now, what I do with the testing, and this article that I just put up is Planet X nearing perihelion. There are a lot of folks, even other researchers out there, and it's very nice to hear. And they compliment me on my image analysis method, which I do is called gamma testing. And gamma testing is something we can do with digital images. You cannot do it with celluloid images, with film. And so with gamma testing, it's like, you have a stereo system and you can set your different frequencies, highs, lows, bass, treble, all these things, and you can play around with all that. But then you have the big volume knob. And when you turn that down, turns down everything. When you turn it up, turns up everything. But there are some things that'll stand out. So you turn down the volume knob, you're listening to Bee Gees or something, and what do you get? Boom, 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 boom. You're getting the bass drum. You're getting something that can really punch through in that very limited, amount of power. Well, when I'm doing gamma testing, what I'm doing is it's just like on your stereo system. You're just cranking down the volume until all you hear left is the drum or what other instrument can get past it. Now, in terms of images, that gets them down to, I reduce them down to hot images and cold images. And a hot image is one that is generating light into the lens of the camera. All right. Our sun is a hot object. It generates light directly into the camera lens. Now, cold images are lens flares and other forms of aberrations. And lens flares and aberrations are simply misdirection of other light sources. And so when you crank down the volume, because they're not generating, they're not sitting there thump, the thump, the thump, the thump like the bass drum, okay? They're going to fade out. They're going to disappear pretty quickly. And, this is because lens flares are something that are going to happen directly in front of the camera lens or inside the lens barrel itself, somewhere in the prisms. And so what I do is I use gamma, all right, which is purely a digital thing. Again, it will not work if you go out with an old Kodak camera and take a picture. No, you don't have gamma settings with that. Gamma is only something that is new to digital photography. And that's really all you see anymore today. And unless you buy a coffee table book on Ansel Adams. But I just crank the gamma down. And when I crank down the gamma, and if your listeners go to my website at marshallmasters.com, actually you're going to see what a gamma test produces right there in the image that it's right at the beginning, the one where the image says, is Planet X nearing perihelion? That is exactly what a gamma test is. And you're going to see the sun, and next to it, you're going to see another hot object. And that object has a blue tint to it. The sun has a red tint to it. And this is the reason why I'm saying, is Planet X nearing perihelion? In other words, is it approaching that point in its orbit, which is 3,600 years? It's a long period, elliptical orbit. It spends most all of its time in the southern skies, all right, until it swoops up around the sun. And it's orbiting the sun actually on two axes. It's going up and down like a yo-yo, but this yo-yo is steeply inclined. And at the same time, it's going around the sun. All right. And so it's tracking around the sun about every 380 days, opposed to our 365, which is the reason why even the ancients in the Colburn Bible tell us that it dances around behind the sun. We see it, we don't see it, we see it, we don't see it, we see it. But then eventually, as our orbits merge, all right, then woo, we see it. Okay. And it just pops out from behind the sun. So if it's reaching its point of perihelion, what that says is that we're going to start getting into this phase where it is going to pop out from behind the sun so that everybody's seeing it. Now, we have folks that are, reporting videos all the time. And what you have to understand is something that's behind the sun, the only time you're going to be able to see it is near sunrise and near sunset. So I get these folks, debunkers, and they go, well, I went out in my backyard this afternoon and I took a look. I didn't see anything. Well, of course you didn't see anything because the sun's too bright. And you're not going to see it. And they don't understand that sunrise, sunset, simple difference. And the point I'm making in this is I have been tracking Nemesis, and I've been doing it for a very long time.
This picture, which will be on the video, so people can see the picture right now.
Right.
Is Planet X nearing perihelion. Are you sure this isn't Mercury or some kind of gravitational reflection?
No, it's not Mercury. I mean, you go into, the easiest thing to do is you just go into solar system scope, and people can go online and do that. But I actually use Starry Night Pro. And that's the program that I use for this. And I go and look, but I mean, I've been looking, at Venus and Mercury for a long time. And I want to tell you, Venus and Mercury do never look that big, period. Okay. And I've seen them in the gamma testing, so, I mean, for me, it's like, I will do this. I'll go to Starry Night, but, I already know it's not Venus or Mercury or something else because it's a hot object. All right. If it's something else, then it'll be a cold object and it won't pass muster with the gamma test. Now, the interesting thing is we're continually tracking this object, which is to the sun's 3 o'clock relative to the horizon. Now, out in space, the ecliptic, the plane of our solar system, puts that more up, say, around 1:30, okay, relative to the sun. But we see it at 3 o'clock because the Earth is tilted, all right? And so our horizon is not the same thing as the ecliptic, the plane of our solar system. I have a video, Planet X System Update number 4, and actually it's in that article, and people can watch it. And we have from Spain, Brazil, and other places where we're tracking the same object in the same exact place at different times of the year. Every case, it is not Venus, it is not Mercury. Those are very small relative to this.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Sagan.
Oh, God, you're... Okay, so you want billions and billions and billions of facts.
Nope, just an extraordinary one.
Okay.
Is this gamma shot your extraordinary evidence?
I think that I'm doing the best that I can, being that I don't have the resources of a government, and I'm just relying on what you have. But there are, in my videos, when I put up something in my video, it's like, it's a challenge to debunkers, disprove this. So in that regard, if you see it in one of my videos, yeah, it's extraordinary.
Basically, you're saying there's a conspiracy by NASA to cover this up.
Oh, yeah. And it goes much higher than NASA.
I just watched the movie Interstellar. Actually, I haven't seen the last 30 minutes, so don't blow it for me. But
oh, no. Okay. All right. Yeah. I won't do that.
Fantastic show so far, right?
It is. Oh.
I'm just riveted, and I have to take breaks because I have to cool off. It's just too much. Are they just not telling us about Planet X because, just like in Interstellar, they didn't think that panic made any difference?
Well, in Interstellar, oh, golly gee, I can't answer that question because you haven't seen the end of the show. I'm not going to kill it for you. But let me, and I do love that. I've probably seen that movie a dozen times. I just do enjoy it. And I especially love, the human angle that they put on it. Now, the reason why we're not being told is we are going to go through a worst case scenario flyby. Now, this has been well documented in the Colburn Bible, which is an ancient wisdom text, and the first parts of it were written about the same time as the 5 books of Moses. And while the Hebrews were wandering in the Sinai, and it tells us that the sinking of Atlantis, Noah's flood, and Exodus were all the result of flybys of this mini constellation system through the core of our system. And the reason why you have some that are best case scenario and worst case scenario, I mean, they're all going to hurt. But there's a particular part, a segment of this orbit, which is from its point of perihelion to where it arcs down to the ecliptic, the plane of the system. And when it does, it comes up and it'll pass over our heads. And when it crosses the ecliptic, it'll do it between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. And this is the phase of the orbit that's very destructive for us. I call it the kill zone. And during Exodus, Earth was on the opposite side of the sun, while Nemesis was in the kill zone when it crossed the ecliptic. This time, we're going to be on the same side of the sun. And the last time that happened was Noah's flood. All right, so we are going to have a pole shift event. And for those that are, read their Bibles. And to me, the Bible, I treat it as a wisdom text. And in that regard, there's a tremendous amount of preparatory information in there about what's going to happen. Days of darkness is something that is definitely going to happen because while Nemesis at the ecliptic is between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, its outermost planet, Nibiru, will be passing between Earth and the Sun, somewhere between the orbits of Earth and Venus. And when that happens, it's, when we have, it's just simply going to be so massive, so large that when it passes in front of the sun, it's going to completely blot out all of the light. And then we're going to have a period of pitch black that is going to be quite disturbing. And then this is when the pole shift's going to happen, because then several bodies in this system will gain what I call lithosphere lock on the surface of our planet. And that will then cause the shift. And you have a magnetic shift, and then you have a crustal shift. We're already in the process of a magnetic shift. All right. And that's the reason why they're having to go out and renumber at airports, the runways, because the runways are all set on magnetic compass settings. And those are changing. And so they have to repaint those and republish. And this is, when you look at what's happening, it's moving around a lot more. So the magnetic pole shift is in its early infancy beginning to do. Then also we would have a flip of the magnetic poles. All right. So where north is now south and south is north. And that's going to happen. This has happened in the deep time history of the planet. And there are those that say it takes, tens of thousands of years for that to happen, but they have found basalt flows, all right, volcanic basalt flows, where they could see that a magnetic reversal occurred in just simply maybe a matter of hours or days. So we're up against it with a really negative flyby. We're going to have a worst case scenario. Now, during the pole shift event, the story of Noah's flood what we learned, there's almost 200 different deluge accounts. All right. Once you get out of the Bible and it's no longer Noah's flood, it's called the deluge. And the deluge was really the big slosh, because what happens is when the lithosphere of the planet moves, all right, well, the water is just going to slosh up onto the continents. All right. And you saw that in the movie 2012. They demonstrated, what that looks like, and those huge waves coming in and hitting and just, taking out vast amounts of shorelines. Well, most of humanity lives along a shoreline or within 50 miles of it. And these are all going to be death zones. So what the elites really want to do is they want to reduce. This is a eugenics agenda. They want to reduce the population because it's really difficult to manage 7 billion people. You don't need 7 billion or 8 billion people to live like a prince and to be a god on your own planet. You can do it with a lot fewer people, and it's a lot easier to manage. So they're suppressing knowledge of this, not because they don't want to cause a panic, all right? If they were to make it, people, they would start moving inland, things would be shifting. That would not be good for their investments, and they're not going to be able to buy as many yachts and big yachts and have their little junkets and fun and do whatever they're doing. But you're going to have more people surviving the event, which means in a time when they're going to have to regain control of the planet. We do live on a slave planet. When 1,000 people own 90% of the world, okay, that's a slave planet. When, you can count the number of people on both hands that control as much wealth as the third poorest of the world's population, that's a slave world. Period. Let's not put happy faces on it. My God, here in America, half of all Americans, over half of all Americans, do not have the money in the bank right now to write a $500 check. That's a fact. We're all strapped and we're living paycheck to paycheck. So, and where's all this wealth? It didn't evaporate. It went into the hands of those that are controlling. So during this tribulation period, there's going to be a destruction. And one of the things that's going to be destroyed is all of these elaborate control systems that the elites who run the world, like puppeteers, all of their control systems are going to be completely and utterly shattered. Now, they're going to be living in their deep underground bases that are 1 to 2 miles deep. And they're going to live very well. And these things were, the money is that they sponged out of us in any number of different ways is what's fueling the building of these things. All right. And you have, they come out and they go, gee, we just lost billions and trillions of dollars. We don't know where they went. What do you know? That was what a big accounting error, I mean, it's like, if you said that to the IRS, they'd laugh at you and then nail you for everything you got, including your genetic code. And so they're going to be in their deep underground bunkers, and they have their seed vaults and storages and whatever. And so their plan is when things start settling down, and they'll know when things are going to settle down, they're going to come up to the surface and see who's left. Now, Georgia Guidestones tell us that, this is a 10 Commandments for the 21st century. Some call it that. And it's written in 8 different languages. And the first one says, keep humanity under 500 million. Well, it doesn't tell us how we get there. It doesn't tell us how 9 in 10 of 90% of us are going to perish and what's going to come. It just says, keep it under 500 million. In other words, once you're there, you're there. don't let the population exceed 500 million for the whole world and live in harmony with nature. Well, that's what's, the vast majority is along the shorelines. And when I look at people who are in denial, I mean, the three big reasons people are going to die during the coming Planet X tribulation is denial, procrastination, and location. Those are going to be the three principal causes of death. All right. Again, denial, procrastination, and location. If you can get people to deny